Oh boy, this is gonna be weird because Transformers Titanium is typically considered the worst Transformers toy line of all time. And even though I'm not a cynical fan, I'm hard pressed to argue that standing. And to be fair, these guys weren't even designed by the Transformers team. They were designed by the Micro Machines team at Galoob, so of course they were going to be rough. They had no experience, and they were using diecast, something that's horrible for transforming toys. But they tried. And I'm going to give you now my top 5 favorite Transformers Titanium figures. Granted, it's 5 out of 6 because that's all I own, but just know they did a lot of figures that I don't own that I would honestly say was pretty good. Other Seekers, the Beast Machines Cheetor they did was actually pretty solid, even their Rodimus was a great toy. Don't take my lack of ownership as meaning that these are the only good toys in Titanium. Titanium had a lot of decent ideas and decent toys, but they also had a lot of things that maybe didn't quite hit the mark. At number 5, it's the miniature Bumblebee. Titanium had two lines. They had the transforming figures that would have stood somewhere between a Deluxe and a Voyager, and then they had these, just the mini figurines. And honestly, this is kind of where Titanium was able to shine. They did a number of kind of obscure characters. A lot of them looked pretty alright. And I do like this G1 Bumblebee. Alongside the wheels on his shoulders, the little Han Solo blaster, a pretty solid attention to detail and sculpting. I really can't complain about this guy. He's a great combination of cartoon and toy aesthetics to give us a Bumblebee look that I would kind of like to see on an articulated figure. I'm not gonna lie, a big reason why I want the Fur Eye model kit of Bumblebee is because he kind of reminds me of this guy. And I have a lot of nostalgia for him. This was actually owned by my cousin when we were young, and this was another toy that I pursued as an adult because there's a little bit of a childhood connection here. Not enough to put it on my childhood toy shelf, but enough to where I'm still pretty happy whenever I see this little Bumblebee. He's a great little figure, one of my favorite Bumblebees of all time even, and I think that's really impressive considering he's 2 inches tall and can only move at the waist and at the arms. A great little figurine. At number 4, it's Thundercracker. And let's give some praise, right? This is the Dreamway War Within design, which is to say this is the closest that we ever got to an official Cybertron Thundercracker using the Cybertron Starscream body. The design is still really nice. However, the transformation's very rough. The jet mode, not quite what I'd want. And the robot mode, even though it looks good, it has a really hard time posing. And even worse, they used rubber on the hands, meaning that in time they're going to dry out and then shatter. I'm going to have a handless Thundercracker. It's going to be depressing. My boy is always going to make it on these lists. I'm sorry, he just is. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily think this is a good figure. My personal biases are really taking the wheel here, and even though I would say he's a good-looking Thundercracker, he is not a good playing Thundercracker. At number 3, it's a little mini guy. It is Alternator's Smokescreen. And this is what I'm talking about. I kind of like the fact that they were willing to take designs from all across Transformers at this point. They did Dreamwave designs, G1 designs, Alternators, Cybertron, animated, movie. They touched every single franchise of Transformers that were around at that point. And I respect them for that. And I do think that this is actually a really nice little Smokescreen. Especially if you like the design like I do, it's kind of nice to have this guy just kind of standing around. I even love how they captured the weirdness of his gun really well. A nice little figurine, albeit one that most people would probably gloss over. At number 2, it's just a standout of Titanium. It's the Fallen Megatronus and his first toy ever. And up until the Age of the Primes one that's going to be coming out next year, this was the only one to use his Dreamwave design. Which is to say, they used the best design. They made him look like the proper Fallen. I love this guy. I love how he looks like a furnace with fires always around him. You can see the very subtle Decepticon logo in his face, and even his tank mode is really, really cool. I just have one big issue with him. Not his design, not his posability. It's how back-heavy he is. A lot of diecast back here, guys, and because of that, not only does the kibble not fold up the way it's supposed to, although it does kind of give him a cape, it means that his legs also can't hold him up. If you were to straighten him out, to try standing like he's supposed to stand, that's going to happen every single time. Diecast is not good for Transformers. I know that people are nostalgic for diecast, I know it was in G1, But diecast honestly ruined a lot of G1 toys too. You want to know why so many of those G1 toys are broken nowadays? It's because diecast doesn't last. And if you try to make an entire toy out of diecast, you're just going to have issues like these. It's kind of amazing that Megatronus is as playable as he is, but if you were to take this amazing design away and just leave the functionality, this wouldn't stack up to classics, Cybertron, the movie. When these guys were coming out, they were surrounded by some of the most impressive Transformers lines of all time, and that's why people soured on them. At number 1, it is the only titanium figure that I think is just good throughout. It is the RID Optimus. This is such a great version of this character. Keep in mind, at this point, your only options for this Optimus were the tiny guy and the big guy. This guy being a deluxe sized and that you still had the super mode was great. It gives you options. It gives you a smaller desk toy of this really cool design. Even better, he can actually do the big cannon gimmick, like with great ease at that. No issues with the balance or the posability. Even though there was diecast here, still, they used it cleverly here. The diecast is almost all in the legs, and then there's a little bit in the chest and the arms, but you got plastic shoulders, plastic ladder, plastic head. The plastic is what's more here. The diecast is just here to change the center of gravity, make sure that Optimus isn't going to fall on himself. In this one instance, titanium used the diecast pieces the way they should be used, to keep the figure upright and to give them heft. When you try to put a lot of diecast in the shoulders, neck, head, all these places that don't need diecast, you get figures like the Fallen. You get figures like G.I. Joe Megatron that falls apart as soon as you pull them out of the box. But this guy was good. He was great even. Bringing the top 2 back in, I just want you guys to think about something, right? Have you ever considered how hard it is to make a Transformer? I mean, to actually make a Transformer, a proper transforming Transformer. Figure out how you get the robot mode, how you get articulation, how you get it to transform, how you even figure out the clearances, how you sit down and have to figure out the geometry to actually get these things to fold into things that look like vehicle modes. I want you to actually consider how brilliant transforming engineers are. Consider all the scientific and mathematical work that go into making a proper Transformer. Good or bad, a lot of work went into each and every one of them. And you look at a line like this, and it's easy to scoff and say, "Oh, titanium, what peasant garbage." But actually, think about this. These were done by Galoob, a historic toy company, with immense success under their belts. They were doing really well at the time. Micro Machines and their Star Wars lines were ranking in cash. So of course Hasbro gives them a project. Hey, do some Transformers for us. Secure some copyrights for us. And I don't want to say they failed. I think that they had many pieces that were incredibly rough. I would say that they attempted to do something near impossible, and it resulted in overall a rather negative experience, both from a production standpoint and a consumer standpoint. But actually, think about this. They were thrown into the deep end, told to make these designs work. And sometimes they pulled it off. Sometimes they did. Beast Machine's Cheetor, the Seekers, Megatronus, Optimus Prime. Sometimes it worked. And even when it didn't work, you could see the ideas they had. Look at their Ultra Magnus. Look at their Rodimus. Look at their Soundwave. Good toys by today's standards? No. Before their time, that Rodimus and that Magnus, boy, they were flying off the shelves. Those were as good as we could get, baby. Because they were solid. Because this team tried. I don't know what I'm trying to get at here. I guess my big point is it's easy to go for the low-hanging fruit of being the angry reviewer and completely writing off everything Titanium did and saying like, "Oh, what pretenders." But actually, take a moment, consider what these sculptors and what these painters and what these designers were doing, and realize that if you and I were in that same situation, we couldn't make a cassette. They made fire trucks and tanks, record players. They made tanks and jets, trucks. They made it work. And some of these toys are still really nice.